Listen. That's the wonderful sound of 760 people in this room consciously listening. It's also the sound of democracy, because democracy requires conscious listening. It's a necessary condition for democracy to function. Democracy, I think, requires two forms of behavior. First, compromise, where we accept that we're not necessarily going to get everything we want all the time. Second, civilized disagreement, where we accept that we're going to live with people we don't necessarily agree with, and if they're the majority, they get to decide how things are. Without conscious listening, neither of these two behaviors is at all easy, and democracy tends to unravel. So this talk is actually a plea to reinstate conscious listening in its rightful place as an essential element of democracy, because I think we've forgotten about it largely, and I seriously believe that democracy is under threat, in danger, as a result of this. We have 4 ways of communicating. On the left-hand side, you see the outputs. On the right-hand side, the inputs. At the top, you have the visual, and at the bottom, you have the oral. Now, I've presented these 4 here with equal weight, but that isn't the way they are in society, is it? Or certainly not in education. Actually, it's a lot more like this, isn't it? We test and teach reading and writing skills avidly. We also understand speaking. These 3 things are easy to spot. If a child has problems in any one of these areas, we'll spot it pretty easily. But listening is a silent skill, and it's easy to overlook. We expect children to pick it up as they go along with little or no formal training. I mean, how many schools actually teach conscious listening skills? Let's have a look at little listening in a bit more detail. I'd like to define listening as making meaning from sound. It's a process which I'm involved in, actually. It's a mental process distinct from hearing, and it's a skill that can be taught, that can be learnt, that can be improved. Most of us, unfortunately, are not very conscious of it. One common mistake is to imagine that everybody listens the same way. Actually, that's not true. Every person in this room has a listening which is unique. It's as individual to you as your fingerprints. That's because we all listen through a set of filters. These filters happen through our life. We're born into a culture, we speak a language, these things affect our listening. And along the way, we accrete values, beliefs, attitudes from our parents, from our friends, from our teachers, from role models. Your road to this point has been very different from mine and from everybody else's in this room. Your filters are different, so your listening is different too. And situationally, when we come into any conversation, we may have expectations or intentions which will shape our listening at that moment. What this all means is that these filters create our perceived reality. And if we are unconscious about the process, it's all too easy for us to think that this meaning-making we're doing, this creative process, is actually the truth, some sort of flat, absolute truth that works for everybody. So I'd like to suggest that it's not just listening that we need, it's conscious listening. It's being aware of this process. So if listening is making meaning from sound, then conscious listening is consciously making meaning from sound. That is, being involved in the process, taking responsibility for the meanings I make. If we go unconscious, listening actually becomes dangerous. We become a victim of our listening, and that way lies a whole world of hurt. Sadly, that is what's happening a lot in the world today. I think our listening is under threat. It's in danger. We're losing it, consciously and unconsciously also. In my TED talk on conscious listening, I gave a number of reasons for this. Today, I'd like to focus on just 2, which I think are particularly important in politics and in debate. First of all, societal impatience. I love this cartoon, and it's sadly very true, isn't it? We don't want oratory anymore. Just like we don't listen to albums, we listen to tracks, we channel hop, we hardly watch anything in its entirety. We can't be bothered listening to a politician prattle on for hours, no matter how good the oratory. We want it as a soundbite. Second, we are becoming numb because of sensationalism in our media. Have you noticed that nobody can be mildly upset in the media anymore? You're either okay or furious. It's one or the other. That kind of dumbing down and polarization of language makes it harder for us because we don't get practice at listening to the quiet, the understated, the complex. Everything has to be black or white, simple yes or no, binary existence. Hyperbole becomes the norm. Politicians become celebrities. Dialectic and rhetoric are replaced by gossip. This is the world as soap opera, and it's largely what our media are moving towards. Underneath these headlines, there lie some pretty common, and I would suggest rather pernicious, journalistic practices. And I see these happening more and more. First of all, news becoming pervaded with opinion, often under the surface, where we don't quite notice it. And then interviews become attacks. Attack journalism is more and more common. Now, in that situation, the interviewee just formulates a defense, and we get a sterile conversation where nobody learns anything very much. We've all heard these things and seen these things. Interrupting becomes the norm. And if you get interrupted 10 seconds into every statement, it's pretty hard to develop a complex argument, isn't it? And finally, a process that I call cockfighting, which is all too common, where you take any issue, and what you do is go out and find two people who are diametrically violently opposed in their views on it, chuck them in a pit, watch the feathers fly for some sort of vicarious sensationalism. These things are all too common, but it's not just the media who are to blame. Of course, media and society are in a circular dance. We encourage this. Why? Because we have become addicted to being outraged. There has to be a guilty party, somebody to blame in every conversation. We love to hunt that down. And this comes from one fixed listening position, which is very dangerous and very, very seductive. It's incredibly common, and you may be familiar with it yourselves, or you may know somebody who's very familiar with it. What is it? It's being right. We love to be right. And the easiest way for me to be right is to make somebody else wrong. If I can blame somebody and be outraged at their behavior, it sets me up above them. I'm judging them from a righteous position. They're diminished, I'm elevated. Makes me feel good. This is incredibly common, and unfortunately, if we go there, if we listen from that particular place, it puts us on a slippery slope. That slope starts with caricaturing people's positions, so it's easier to dismiss them. We polarize debate, so it's right or wrong, there's no gray in between. And as these things get fixed, get ossified, we move in our listening into prejudice, bigotry, hatred, and we all know where that leads. Now, this is why conscious listening is so important. If we are conscious of the process, of our part in creating meaning, of our ability to take responsibility for what we're taking in, then we get understanding. Conscious listening always creates understanding in conversation. It stops us from depersonalizing human beings. If we stop listening consciously and we depersonalize, all sorts of horrible things become possible. These things are only possible by depersonalizing and by not consciously listening. And you don't have to look far today in the media, do you, to see these things playing out in the world, in the Ukraine, in Syria, and in Iraq, in Thailand. These are all places where democracy is either under threat through fixed listening, being right, permitting nobody to debate with us, or democracy has been replaced altogether. Politicians also need to listen to their electorate, don't they? It's not just us listening to each other. Politicians need to do that, and I think the recent European election results indicate that that may not always be the case. Maybe they need to listen more carefully. Incidentally, we describe political efforts to resolve conflict as talks, don't we? Wouldn't they better be described as listens? What do you think? I'd like to give you two ways of improving your conscious listening, whether you work in politics or just in your life. I hope these will be useful to you. The first is the concept of listening positions. Now, I don't mean physical positions here. This is a metaphor. So if there's a house on a hill and you don't like the way it looks from here, you can walk around the other side of the hill and see how it looks from there. Well, just in the same way, we could adopt different listening positions. Most people, because they're not aware of those filters or the fact that they are creating this listening, most people listen from some sort of a concrete bunker that they've been in for years and years and years, and they have no idea they can walk out of the back door and try a different place. Let me give you some examples. 3 scales of listening. Now, there are many, many listening positions. You can create your own. There are as many as you want to be imaginative with. But here are 3 scales to get you started. First, this is a bit of a gender stereotype, reductive to expansive. Men tend to listen in a way I call reductive, that is, for a point, to solve a problem. Typical male conversation, I've got this problem, here's the solution, thanks. So we're quite simple that way. Women, on the other hand, tend to listen in a way that I call expansive. In expansive listening, there is no point. It's not about a point, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey and enjoying the journey with the person you're with. Now, if these two get confused, you get a conversation like, she comes home, I've had this dreadful day, this happened, this happened, this happened. He looks up from the football and says, have a bath, you'll feel much better. Now, in the male world, that's problem solved, back to the football. In the female world, perhaps that wasn't quite what she was looking for. The most common complaint in relationships, he never listens. Expansive and reductive, play with that. It's good to move from one to the other. Critical, empathetic. Critical listening is what you've been doing to me ever since I came on the stage. It's very useful in business, in politics, but not necessarily all the time. Sometimes we need to move to empathetic listening, where you go onto the other person's island, feel their feelings, and leave them feeling not just heard, but understood. And in this particular sphere of politics, I'd like to suggest another scale, from being right to being curious. Now, one of those listening positions allows us to grow and to learn. The other does not. Which one is more useful? The second idea I'd like to leave you with is a short and simple mnemonic. These are the 5 key elements of conscious listening. It's a cheerful mnemonic as well, because it goes hurrah, which is rather uplifting. The H of hurrah, humility. I'm not always right. If I permit myself to be wrong, then I can learn. The A is awareness of the process, awareness of the fact that I am consciously listening, not just being in the listening, being apart from it, and taking responsibility for what I'm doing. The R is respect, for you as a human being, and for your right to have views which are not the same as mine. The A, attention. Without paying real attention, it's impossible to listen. You know, listening requires making that person the most important person on this planet for the short time you're listening to them. And tragically, I think there are billions of people on this earth who've never had the experience of being properly listened to like that. And the H, of course, almost the most important thing, a sense of humor. It's the gravest possible mistake to take ourselves too seriously in life and certainly in politics. A sense of humor can defuse almost any conflict. It can certainly right-size it. And if we lose the ability to laugh at life and indeed at ourselves, surely we're less than human. So, little listening. It's not so little, is it? Actually, even though it's silent, it's magnificent in its ability to bring us together as human beings. It permits and underlays civil society and democracy. It's as important in our homes as it is in our debating chambers. So let's teach conscious listening in schools. And let's reinstate conscious listening in its rightful place as at the heart of the entire of democracy and our political process. Starting right now, as you sit here or watch this, make a promise to yourself. From this day forward, listen, and listen consciously. Thank you.